Welcome and thank you all for attending the Creek Trail Network Expansion Master Plan meeting. The focus of tonight's meeting will be on the proposed trail along Calabasas Creek. My name is Ralph Garcia with the City of Santa Clara Public Works Department and Project Manager for the Creek Trail Master Plan. This meeting will be recorded and posted online on the project webpage at santaclaraca.gov/Creek Trail Plan. If you have questions about the project, you can email me at rgarcia1@santaclaraca.gov. I will now go over some slides on how to use Zoom. First, you can rename yourself on the Participants tab on the bottom of the screen. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentation. We'll answer any questions on Zoom by using the raised hand feature. If you're calling in, dial *9 if you would like to speak during the Q&A session. You can also type your question in the Q&A module, and we will read your questions during the Q&A segment of the presentation. If you attended the previous meetings for the proposed trails along the Saratoga Creek or Hetch Hetchy right-of-way, thank you for joining us again. The agenda for the Calabasas Creek will be similar. Oops, go back to the agenda. Will be similar to the other meetings. We'll introduce the project team, provide an overview of what will be accomplished by the project, share some of the input we received from the community so far. Also, we'll provide a detailed look at the Calabasas Creek Trail and show project schedule for the upcoming project meetings. And then as mentioned, there'll be time for Q&A at the end. The Calabasas Creek Trail is the longest in the plan, so this meeting may last a little bit longer than the others. So as mentioned, my name is Ralph Garcia, Senior Civil Engineer and Project Manager for the project. We also have Steve Chan and Nicole He joining us tonight. And Mike Liu and Carol Sherry are also working on the project. So at this time, I would like to introduce Jana Sokal, who is leading the project consultant team and will take you through the rest of the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining this community outreach meeting, the third in the series of corridor meetings. I want to let you know the consultant team is an interdisciplinary team that includes engineers, landscape architects, geologists, geomorphologists, traffic planners, surveyors, environmental consultants, biologists. It's a broad team because it's a broad area with diverse issues that we are working to resolve with the 3 trail alignments. As Ralph mentioned, this is the third of the outreach meetings. About a month ago, we held a meeting on Saratoga. Last week, we were talking about the Hetch Hetchy corridor. And tonight, our focus will be on Calabasas Creek, which extends from approximately Benton Street all the way out to the Baylands beyond Highway 237, where it would potentially connect with the San Francisco Bay Trail, providing access to the north and south to Sunnyvale and Mountain View, and south towards San Jose. It's approximately 6 miles. Calabasas has many great opportunities for the city. I would say that it's most similar to the existing San Tomas Aquino Creek Trail that many of you may use. Most of the trail would be built on existing elevated levees that are owned and operated by Valley Water. The trail has many connections, direct connections into Caltrain and light rail, connections to area schools with Mission College and Wilcox High being right on the alignment, Businesses along El Camino would be served by the trail. You could ride your bike out to the AMC Theater Complex at the Mercado Shopping Center. And it would also connect to the proposed Hetch Hetchy Trail that provides access to many other key amenities within the city of Santa Clara. None of these trails come without challenges. Um, in order to provide a trail which is separated from car traffic, uh, in evaluating all of the bridge crossings over Calabasas, we determined in the feasibility study that it would require 3 pedestrian overcrossings. Those are expensive structures, which propose a challenge. We also have new challenges that are ever evolving with climate change. Sea level rise has the potential to impact both existing trails around the bay as well as new trails that are being proposed. It's anticipated that some of the downstream trail underpasses would flood more frequently, and we need to consider those things in design. So we have done quite a bit of community outreach. The city showcased this project both at Earth Day and Bike to Work Day. We introduced the Park and Rec Commission to the project a couple of months ago. We held a general community meeting introducing all 3 of the corridors and collected information from the community then. I believe that meeting was in person as well as hybrid. And since that time, we've done individual meetings on the 3 corridors. Oh, yes, and we also went to the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee, who had a number of comments on all 3 of the corridors. Some of the comments specific to Calabasas was the need to identify on-street routes for when the trail underpass is closed due to flooding. There was an idea to redesign Calabasas Boulevard so a trail could be near the creek and yet still protected from car traffic. There was a concept to want to identify those easy segments that might even be less expensive segments to implement first. And then additional comments that were spread across all 3 of the corridors. A survey was conducted in the May-June timeframe. We asked 10 or 12 questions of the public. I could just highlight a couple for you. We looked at all 3 of the corridors that are being investigated and asked participants how often they might use these corridors. Calabasas seemed to be the one that of the 90 respondents got the most votes for daily and weekly use. And you can see that in the bar chart here. Hetch Hetchy and Saratoga were about the same. We also asked trail users, survey respondents, what they wanted most for amenities along the trail. And these are the top 6 of the maybe 15 that we queried on. So trees and restrooms were the top 2. Shady trail and access to rest spots. Bottle filling stations, folks trying to move away from plastic. Trail maps, wayfinding signs in order to get around through the city and to other cities, and then wildlife habitat enhancements and trash receptacles along the trail. So the master plan builds upon the city's work from that concluded in 2013 when a feasibility study was done on all 3 of these corridors. Some aspects of the corridors were removed from the master plan for infeasibility. And then the work that we're doing for this portion of work includes all of these items you see on the slide. Much of the emphasis is on the preliminary engineering, hydraulic analysis, traffic analysis. And then from that will come reports. When we look at feasibility and we carry that concept into the master plan, there are a number of things that determine whether a trail may be feasible. The first one, as you might assume, is land availability. Who owns the land? Are they willing to share it with the public? What easements cross that land? How wide is the top of bank beyond the hinge point of the creek where a trail might be able to be located? What vegetation is there, what utilities extend through the corridor, maintenance access to all of those utility providers as well as Valley Water must be retained. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the whole aspect of climate change, sea level rise, and flooding, both from increasing tidal events as well as from potentially higher peak flows coming downstream when we have winter storm events. There have also, since 2013, when the feasibility study was completed, there have also been some changes in what I'll call stakeholder policies. So, the most recent one, Valley Water adopted some criteria and guidance for how trails can be implemented on lands that they own. And the intent of the guidance was to balance the protection of stream habitat and wildlife and sensitive resources with public access. Whenever we enter the environment, we immediately have an impact just by our presence in the environment, but we also have an impact by construction changes on the land. Hetch Hetchy, which is owned by the city and county of San Francisco, and the purpose of Hetch Hetchy is to really convey large water pipelines from Yosemite all the way into Santa Clara and San Mateo County, historically has been very receptive to having public access on their lands. You couldn't really build anything that went subgrade because the pipelines were there, but a trail on top of the land had always been relatively well accepted. Now, policies have changed over the years, and they're a little bit more concerned about opening access. They want to make sure there are good agreements in place. They want to preserve some of their right of way for future construction, or in the event we have a critical event like an earthquake and there needs to be lots of work done on the pipelines, as well as they now charge fees for the use of their land in order to be fair to their ratepayers who own and manage all of these lands. And lastly is a change in policy from the city of Santa Clara itself. Back in maybe 2016, I think, the city passed Measure R, which talked about the use of parklands and how they could be used. So all of those are changes that have happened since the feasibility study. The other thing that we investigated and then looked at solutions for through the master planning process were whether we could extend the trail underneath city roadways. And that's generally dependent upon whether you have enough vertical clearance or head clearance underneath the bridges for a trail, as well as whether you're able to open up the floodway in order to provide a trail, but also to continue to provide adequate flood passage for those 100-year events. We determined that 5 of the roadways that cross Calabasas Creek have the potential to have trail underpasses, and those are noted here on the slide. One of those areas was the Old Mountain View Alviso Road, which was a lower bridge that also was had run its useful life. And the cities of Sunnyvale and Santa Clara partnered on that project a couple of years ago to replace the bridge and incorporated adequate headspace for a trail should either of the cities want to partner or go alone and build the trail. So you can see that bridge under construction in these photos and then the finished product in these slides. There are also bridges that cannot support a trail underpass. Generally, these are culverts, box culverts, where you cannot open the channel to be able to allow passage for flow. And when you place a trail into a culvert, you're adding fill. So these are where some of these overpasses might be needed at Highway 101, Caltrain, and Central Expressway. And then there may be, and do exist today, at grade crossings at Machado and Warburton, which are on part of the bikeway plan along Calabasas Boulevard today. There are other crossings that may potentially be needed. We mentioned the overpasses. There are also some at-grade crossings. These are primarily along Calabasas Boulevard and exist today. There's the potential also for two pedestrian and bicycle bridges. There's one necessary bridge to get to Earl Carmichael Park, which is on Benton, and that is to get the trail from one side of the creek to the park side. And then there is an existing bridge that some of you may use, which is at Agate Drive. That bridge could remain or could be upgraded depending on the alignment selected at the Caltrain area. We would also need to modify the bike lanes and sidewalks on East Arquez, Scott Boulevard to accommodate pedestrians and bicyclists in that area. Finally, any work along a creek has sensitivities for habitat. And we know that the city of Santa Clara has Central Coast steelhead that come up Calabasas Creek. This photo no, I think this is from a different creek, but I have photos of the steelhead in Calabasas Creek. Santa Clara is also known to have a burrowing owl population. Ridgway's rails are further downstream, so there are a variety of habitat sensitivities. We also worry about cultural resource sensitivities. A little bit less so on Calabasas because many of the places we're proposing trails are already elevated levees that are built on fill and not native soil. So with that background, let me now take you through the alignments. You'll see this slide a couple of times through the presentation. In general, if you look at Calabasas Creek, anything that's in green gives you a general sense that a grade separated trail with underpasses and overpasses is potentially feasible. And the purple line that you see here is mainly Calabasas Boulevard, where we cannot put a trail below those streets. And we have proposed a different type of solution in that area. I'm going to take us from upstream to downstream through these slides. When you look at these maps, the green generally indicate, large box of green indicates city parks, large box of brown indicates schools. Anything that's highlighted in the light yellow is generally a business district. The trail is indicated in a dashed black line. The creek is in a blue line, just to give you a little bit of sense as to how to read these maps. And through this section, from Pomeroy up to Earl R. Carmichael Park, the trail is proposed to be on Valley Water levees and then use a pedestrian bridge to get over to Carmichael to connect out to the bike lanes on Benton Street. Also, once we get past Pomeroy, all the way down to Georgetown, almost Monroe, the city has left-hand bike lanes that have been developed on Calabasas Boulevard, and you can see that photo here on the slide. We would continue to use that existing system unless we were to do something more extensive with redesigning the street. And I will talk a little bit about that at the very end of the presentation. But more than likely, at least in the short term, from Pomeroy all the way down to Monroe would remain a bikeway on the city streets. And here again, this gives you the sense passing through El Camino, remaining on Calabasas Boulevard, then coming into where Calabasas joins Monroe, which is where we would rejoin the creek. You can see from this one photo how narrow the channel is. It's lined by eucalyptus and oleander on Calabasas Boulevard, and we would not have a way to get into that channel for a grade separated trail. The trail connects here to Wilcox High, which could help students get to school either on bike or by foot. And then a crossing at grade is proposed at Monroe Street to get us back um, into the creek corridor itself. This is where a lot of the engineered structures come into play. So as we move from Monroe Street all the way down to the Bay Trail, I'm going to chat with you about a number of structures that are proposed to facilitate trail access. The first of these happens at the Caltrain JPB area. And there are 3 different crossing options that we're pursuing in that area. The trail then goes on a trail underpass at Kiefer, another overpass at Central Expressway, and then again a trail underpass at Arquez. Let me take you through the JPB Caltrain overpass area and just show you how we developed a few options in that location. So Caltrain runs up and down the peninsula. Freight is also on that rail line. And more recently, as many of you are aware, the tracks have been electrified. What passes beneath here is Calabasas Creek passes beneath the bridge in 2 of the box culverts that you see on the upstream side, but there's also a third box culvert, and that's called the El Camino Drain, which is a creek slash drainage channel that drains all the area from the Lawrence Station near Caltrain, as well as all the neighborhoods and it's essentially a tributary into Calabasas. And it's a box culvert, so we've got to go over. This is just a quick sketch of the assessor parcel numbers in that area when we first started to look at the master plan. The blue at the bottom is the East Channel Drain that flows then into Calabasas Creek, that's vertical on your slide. The pink is the Caltrain corridor. And the orange is also train corridor, but that is still owned by the Union Pacific Railroad. And any overpass has got to span all of these areas. On the left, you see a piece of the the El Camino Drain as it's flowing in to Calabasas Creek. There are 3 options in this location. On the left-hand side of your screen, you have an aerial image. You can see the train tracks running vertically, north and south, and the trail would come from Monroe Street in that magenta line, cross on the proposed pedestrian bridge. This bridge would potentially replace the one at Agate if we were to select this option, and then begin to ramp up into a large switchback ramp that's between the El Camino Drain, which is a creek channel, and the Caltrain tracks. The bottom of the bridge has to be at 27 feet. So the ramping is long in order to meet accessibility guidelines and to get up and over the trains. It would then descend into a redevelopment zone that's along the creek to the south. So that's one of those crossing options. Let me take you to the third. This option is a straight flyover, no switchback. All of these have different pros and cons. But this would ramp up and over and then descend back into that redevelopment area. The third option is an underpass. It's a tunnel option. This would stay on the right bank of the creek and would switch back down, and a tunnel would be bored underneath the train tracks. It would then come back up, switch around, and actually have to cross the Union Pacific tracks that still exist in that area. That train services some industrial buildings in that area and runs maybe once a week. So, as of a couple of years ago, that train was still active. So, that's a concern as to whether that might be feasible or not. So, just to give you a sense of the three possibilities, and all of these possibilities are being discussed with the stakeholders and have been with the Caltrain JPB, with Union Pacific, with Valley Water, as well as with Sunnyvale, because some of these lands are actually in the Sunnyvale area. So lots of coordination in order to come up with an alignment that would serve the trail. Then the trail would extend along the elevated levees that you see here and descend beneath Kiefer on a traditional trail underpass. And there's a graphic image of that. I don't know that the railing would exist. We've been moving away from any railings due to flooding issues, but it gives you a sense that you would be down next to the water. Then this graphic shows you another trail overpass, which would be a full length span, no switchbacks at Central Expressway. This, there is limited top of bank on the south side of, oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip one? Oh, and I guess I skipped one. And we've moved ahead. I'm now back at 101. But I'll say my thought that at Central Expressway, the overpass looks very similar to this concept. And there is some land limitations on the south side of Central where, as redevelopment occurs and is occurring in that area, an additional 10 or 12 feet longitudinally along the back of the levee would be very useful. Now moving downstream, we get to Highway 101. This is probably the largest span in length from a roadway that you're crossing. I would say the JPB one is actually a longer structure because it has to be higher at 27 feet. I think this structure is at 18 or 19 feet at height from the road surface. And it would come across the highway and then land likely on Mission College Boulevard, maybe in a switchback or maybe as a single landing. This would get many of the residences and businesses that are located to the north of Highway 101 into the heavily job-dependent North Shore of Santa Clara and out to a lot of sports and entertainment areas. Direct access to Mercado Shopping Center, direct access to the college. The bottom of this map also shows you that the trail would connect to the existing pedestrian bridge, an existing trail that extends from Calabasas Creek off to the John Christian Greenbelt in Sunnyvale, where the Hetch Hetchy lands are developed as a park amenity. Here's a view looking from downstream, upstream at the box culverts at 101 and the enormous outfall that is there that drains part of Sunnyvale into Calabasas Creek. Even though you can walk under that space today, there's no physical room to add fill to build a trail and a ramp system there. And that's why the underpass is proposed. The overpass is proposed, no underpass here. Here's one view of what that overpass could look like. So as it comes down to Mission College, it could ramp to bring people directly up to the crosswalk. Or there is a possibility here to extend it all along the flood wall. Mission College Boulevard would have to be somewhat rearranged to accommodate the space needed for the overpass in that area. From Highway 101 and the Hetch Hetchy connection, the trail would descend below Tasman Drive, which conveys light rail through the city. On Trail Underpass, it would take advantage of the old Mountain View Alviso Road, where the head clearance has been created by the new bridge. And then eventually it would also descend underneath Highway 237, ramping up to connect to the Bay Trail. Those two roads, Old Mountain View Alviso and Highway 237, are so close together that you essentially would be down below the hinge point of the creek the entire way. So you can see from these photos that this area is tidal and it has water year round. So there are sea level rise impacts to these lower trail underpasses in the years ahead. I also want to mention another project that we're looking at and how it may weave into this planning, and that downstream of both Calabasas and the existing San Tomas Aquino Creek Trail, Valley Water and the Army Corps of Engineers is working on what's called the Calabasas San Tomas Aquino Creek / marsh restoration project. These two creeks are very linear and they were channelized to flow out to the bay. That's an unnatural experience. There are mitigation lands in between them, and then these creeks flow out through the Salt Pond Restoration Project, where Pond A4 and A8 exist. There is a planning process underway to reconfigure and realign these creeks to make them more sinuous, more connected to the habitat, to allow them to move through the ponds in order to restore tidal marsh and create more habitat through the South Bay Salt Pond Restoration Project and Valley Waters work, which would sequester carbon to mitigate climate change, and would also provide some level of flood attenuation as climate change impacts affect the South Bay. How that will affect the downstream areas of the existing San Tomas Aquino Creek Trail and the proposed Calabasas Creek Trail we're working on. And I don't have all the answers to that, and I think those answers will even develop in the years ahead. That project is in planning now. It's not supposed to go into design, I think, until 2028, and maybe not construction until 2030. But it's something that the city of Santa Clara will have to consider when moving any aspect of the Calabasas Creek project forward. I have just a couple more slides for you. I know it's a little long of a presentation, but I want to introduce one more concept tonight. I'm taking us back to Calabasas Boulevard now, where left-hand bike lanes exist on the boulevard from Pomeroy all the way down to approximately Georgetown Place. Here's an old photo of that area with the eucalyptus trees and the oleander. And I've heard that the eucalyptus are dropping all kinds of seeds and leaves onto the left-hand bike lanes. But when I talked about habitat sensitivity at the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned that anytime we enter the environment or we build in creek environments, there are environmental impacts. And there would be, certainly with Calabasas. The only way to mitigate those is to find a place to offset those impacts. And those places really don't exist in Santa Clara County anymore. Santa Clara has a unique opportunity to potentially re-green the corridor from Pomeroy all the way down to Georgetown. This could not be done by Santa Clara alone, as Valley Water owns and controls the creek channel, and the city of Santa Clara owns and controls the roadways on either side of the creek. I'll also mention that the roadway is narrower south of El Camino and wider north of El Camino, as you can see from this little chart. We have looked at a way to re-green the corridor, several possibilities, which could give the city mitigation credit to offset the impacts of building the trails, and may even provide credits to Valley Water and or credits for other projects within the city. If we go to the next slide, I'll show you one option. And I want to preface this by saying the intent of this exercise was simply to indicate whether we could take concrete out of the channel, lay it back to create more flood flow, to provide habitat to create mitigation credits, and whether it would actually work hydraulically in order to continue to pass flood flows in these areas. In doing that, you take away roadway. And we have put together three potential options of what that new roadway would look like and how the creek could widen out, both north and south of El Camino because of the different widths that exist in those areas. This was not to come up with a specific design, but it was whether to determine what would be the questions you would ask if you were to move forward with this. But the answer for all of these, for all three options, is that we have been able to find a way to pass those flood flows that where some level of mitigation could occur. This is the more limited habitat enhancement option. The next slide shows a more moderate habitat enhancement where the channel aligning on both sides is removed, the concrete is removed, and the channel is laid back a bit. In all of these, you'll see a low flood wall along the channel, and then street trees planted outside and a trail along the creek. And the third option eliminates even more roadway. The bottom of the channel becomes wider, and you get more of a low floodplain. Any of these would work, but it's a trade-off. You get mitigation credits, you get a beautiful green center of the city, but you lose some lanes of travel and or parking. So those are pros and cons that you would have to consider. But we were looking at a way to potentially find the mitigation necessary to move these trail projects forward. And this would have to be decided upon by all of the agencies involved. And with that, just a reminder, none of these trail projects happen quickly. I think the San Tomas Aquino Creek Trail in the city of Santa Clara was built piece by piece in logical pieces that made good connections to the on-street system. But I think that took a good 15 years of construction and probably another 5 of planning in advance of that. But piece by piece, it happened. Our next steps for this process will be to come back to the community with even more refined alignments in the fall or winter and to circulate a draft trail master plan and then eventually to come forward with a final plan in 2026. If you haven't signed up to get meeting details, please click on the QR code and add your name to the list. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Ralph and Nicole and Steve for question and answers.
Thank you, Jonna. Yes, and Nicole will be helping us facilitate the question and answer session.
Yeah, thank you. So let's open up the floor for raised hand. I think Linda has her hand raised first, so I'm going to allow you to talk. Linda, can you unmute yourself? Ralph, can you see if you can allow her to talk? I don't think I have the full option.
Can you hear me now? There we go.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, Linda, we can hear you. Thank you.
I walk a lot from El Camino to Wilcox High School. And I think that the bike lane, I also bike a lot, walk a lot, bike a lot, both. The bike lane there right now is horrible. So do not put eucalyptus next to bike lanes. That's really what they raise and lower they drop branches, they drop pieces, and they raise the street with roots, etc. It's bad enough that I actually go on the sidewalk instead. And that's not, I would be delighted to actually use the bike lane, but it's not. And also it crisscrosses various places, so it doesn't make any sense. That's all.
Thank you, Linda, for your comment. We'll note that.
Okay, next is Jeff. Jeff Houston, I'm gonna allow you to talk.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to emphasize the importance of keeping the creek shaded for the aquatic habitat. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll go to Kevin's iPhone. Kevin, can you try unmute yourself? Kevin, if you're speaking, I cannot hear you.
Is that working? I pushed a couple times.
Oh,
Is that
now
it?
it works. Yes, we can hear
Okay,
you.
bingo.
Thank you.
Okay. First off, many years ago, we started on the San Tomas Aquino Saratoga Creek Trail. And you have the best person working with you, John Sakala. There's nobody better. And I was looking back and can't believe I was in my 20s and now I'm in my 60s. As you were saying, it takes a while to get these things through. Wonderful presentation, great job, City. Question I have is, there are a couple areas we end up going, putting a trail up the San Tomas Expressway, and that ends now at, I believe, Homestead, and probably could go up to Stevens Creek. Is that going to be considered in some of the things the city is doing? And the second question, last question, is in front of Burke's Restaurant, McCandless Towers, there is some area that's in front of the parking structure there, but is below the freeway. So it would look like an area that the freeway would never need to grab for an interchange or for anything like that. Are any of those other areas being considered to bring access to these wonderful trails that are being there? That's my question.
Jana, do you want me to show any maps? We can pull that up if you want to answer that question.
So there are two questions. One is the extension of the San Tomas Aquino Creek Trail past Homestead, and Ralph and Nicole, I'll pass that one to you.
On the expressway.
On the expressway, along San Tomas Expressway.
Am I muted? Yeah, so the San Tomas Expressway is obviously not part of this project, but I do believe there is a county project to extend the current San Tomas Aquino Creek Trail further south along the expressway. I believe it's just in the planning stage right now. And I think they're about to start that phase of the project.
Okay.
Fantastic.
And then the next question was about Burke's Restaurant. which I'm not 100% sure where it's located.
You get on the Great America Parkway. There's a section there that I think with all the trails there, the trail comes up as it goes over the 101, and there's a lot of road, or what would you say?
Right
There's a
away,
lot of
Caltrans right away?
yeah, there's a lot of Caltrains plus, building, where it's just not being utilized. And is there a potential that we could look into in further studies if we could actually utilize that to, bring people over to other areas that would be harder to get to?
Okay. I
Mhm.
don't have an answer for you, Kevin, but I can look at that and, address it in the next meeting and or bring it in, incorporate it into the master plan. I'll have to look at it relative to these alignments.
Appreciate it. Thank you. You're the best.
Okay, next we'll go to Betsy. Betsy, I believe you're unmute, but I cannot hear you. Can you try again? I don't think I can hear you if you're talking.
How about now?
Oh, yes, now we
Ah,
can hear
okay.
you.
I'm glad you answered Kevin's question. The County Roads project to extend the San Tomas Trail south of Homestead is the next 2 miles or so all the way to Moore Park. And that's so far in the fairly early planning stages, as you noted. Let's see, I put these in the Q&A, but I might as well read them off. There was on the Agate Drive and the Caltrain. First of all, it's super important that we create additional opportunities for people to cross the Caltrain tracks, especially on foot and on bikes. That's a big deal. I see at least one of the concepts here that you mentioned replacing the existing Agate Drive bridge. The existing Agate Drive bridge is part of a pretty important bike route that really goes all the way to Sunnyvale and even into Mountain View. So before you replace it outright, please understand what it's doing and make sure that the replacement also serves those functions. That said, I would be in favor of upgrading that bridge as long as it's not holding up the whole rest of the project. Today's bridge is kind of small and seems a little bit old and rickety, to be honest. And I've also have found at least one time somebody parked kind of directly in front of the ramp, and on a bike you kind of handle that by getting off and walking a few steps, but in a wheelchair that might not be possible. So for the on-street part there, might be worth painting a few feet of red curb. There was a Caltrain crossing option number 3 that looked like quite a bit of tunnel.
Yes, yes.
And man, that creeps me out. I don't love the switchbacks and stuff. If we have to do that, if we have to do that, we have to do that. But we need to think about how to make this not dark and creepy. And
Yeah.
I gave you an example. They're actually doing some work on the 280 Winchester interchange sometime soon. But the Monroe and Moore Park has a big overcrossing, and then it has a tunnel, and that tunnel is dark and it's creepy, and I don't want to meet somebody in there, and it always smells like urine. So
And Betsy, one thing I failed to say in the presentation is the tunnel is open air until you get to the tracks, but you're still in a tunnel, but it is open to the sky.
it would be sort of a
It's like a long,
canyon.
yeah, exactly. It'd be kind of like a canyon into a tunnel into a canyon. Yes, yes. But better than
Does
being in a tunnel the entire way.
okay.
But I hear you.
those are still a little difficult. The bad example on the open air tunnel is the 85 bikeway,
Mhm.
or the 87 bikeway rather. Not so fondly called the jail trail by some people who have had to ride it. Also, let's see, the switchback that you show in the Mission College overpass concept is a long way to walk. I think you got my comment the time before about making sure that there's room to turn around a trailer or a cargo bike or trike or any of
Right.
those things.
Yeah.
I'm seeing an opportunity to put stairs up to the side of this, from somewhere on that concrete pad for the folks that would rather take them and ascend a little more rapidly. And I know this is just a concept drawing for now. And then on Calabasas, I hope that we will come on Calabasas Boulevard. I hope we will come to a selection there that reduces the total number of travel lanes, because there aren't a lot of other residential 25-mile-an-hour streets that need 2 lanes in each direction, and I don't know that Calabasas Boulevard has the traffic throughput to need them either. Reducing the number of lanes tends to reduce the speeds that people naturally drive. People drive to the design of the road, not the posted speed limit. And so designing the road to look like it's meant for slower speeds would make the whole area safer in terms of traffic safety. And it also gives us a little bit of additional space that we can depave. So I think those were my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Betsy. So next we'll go to Diane.
Okay. Yeah, actually I put mine also in the Q&A, but I wasn't sure if you were going to Q&A.
We
It's
will,
just a
yeah.
short. Okay, I love Betsy's comments, but mine is just short. Please try to avoid switchbacks on both overpasses and underpasses. Those U-turns are hard to navigate on bikes and wheelchairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, and then we'll go to Jen's iPhone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. So I did put a couple of
Sorry, Jen. I think there's an echo. Maybe you have another device.
Okay, so I'm moving away. Is
Oh,
that
now
better?
it's better. Yes.
Better.
Thank you.
Okay, so I did put a couple of questions in the chat, but wanted to follow up. So I live on Pomeroy and my house backs up to the creek. And I didn't see that there was a slide showing what the creek trail would look like from El Camino to Benton.
So, Jen, in that area, it would stay the same as it is unless we go to the last 3 slides in the presentation where Calabasas Boulevard in its totality would be redesigned and the creek would be widened out and the trail would then be on the city street along the creek somewhere. So that would be a complete redesign. Otherwise, it would stay the same, sort of as it is today, from Pomeroy all the way down to Monroe. Meaning you're not on a trail, you're on the bike lanes between those two points.
Oh, so you're not talking about actually making people walk like above the creek right now where like Valley Water drives their trucks and stuff.
Not from Pomeroy downstream to Monroe.
What
unless
about the other direction though?
in the other direction, from Pomeroy upstream, you can see the black dash line on what would be the left bank of the creek, on the opposite bank from Pomeroy Elementary School, and then bridging across to get into Earl Carmichael Park, extending through the park out to the crosswalk at Benton.
Okay, so it's on the opposite side of the creek.
Right.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that's beneficial for me because I did have a concern about having like a lit trail like in my backyard.
Yeah, so these trails are not lit. There's no lighting except if we're crossing like a Caltrans structure or a big overpass, those generally have to have very low lighting. But those are usually over main freeways or rail lines. But if you walk or hike the San Tomas Aquino Creek Trail, you'll see that there's no lighting on the trail itself.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. And then are you guys sending do you guys send out mailers for like this meeting and discussion, or was it just whatever announcements were caught on the website?
We do have a mailing list. If you go to the project webpage, you can sign in for project updates, and we'll send updates about future meetings or surveys, or if the plan is ready to review.
Okay, so you're not required to notify residents whose homes back up to the creek.
This is just a planning project, so this is the first step to get a master plan. So
Oh,
there's
okay.
actually no construction as part of this project. If there is a construction project, then that's when the time will come to let residents know about
Okay.
future construction.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, and you may or may not be aware, there is a bit of a homeless problem in Calabasas Creek,
Mhm.
in the area that's like on the map right now, like around Earl Carmichael Park, all the way to Benton, like behind the fire station and stuff. So, not sure how that will impact what is done or not done.
I'll just share one thing with you, Jen. Um, that is a wholly another issue, but we have seen in some situations when a public trail is built, it becomes a less hospitable place um, to set up camp. That's not always the case. Sometimes the trail can facilitate you getting in and out of camping. So it's a double-edged sword, but it's a bigger issue than even the trail. But thank you for letting us know of that area, that issue behind the fire station and at Earl Carmichael.
Right. And then does this extend past Benton or it will end at Benton?
It would end at Benton. Good question. We looked at extending it further up towards Prune Ridge, and it's not feasible. And that was determined in the feasibility study and reconfirmed. There's just no land there. And there are big hydraulic jumps in the channel, and it just doesn't work.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Because I know that there is a proposed family shelter going in at Lawrence and Benton, which also backs up to the creek. So just
Oh.
was kind of giving you a heads up that, oh, by the way,
Okay.
merging projects. But it sounds like that wouldn't be an issue if you're ending right on Benton outside of Carmichael Park. So
Okay, thank you, Jen. Linda, I
you.
see you still have your hand raised. I'm going to ask you unmute yourself if you have additional
Yes, I have
questions. Yeah.
additional, and of course I forgot it, but let's see. Is there going to be any mosquito abatement? Because Calabasas Creek sometimes has a lot of mosquitoes there. Which,
So mosquito abatement is handled by County Vector Control. It
yes,
wouldn't be part of this plan per se. But it's an interesting comment that you raise, and I would also encourage you to raise that comment for the Calabasas, San Tomas Aquino,
Yes.
A8 and A4 restoration. Because, and I would think that that vector control is involved in that redesign of the downstream area. Yes,
Thank you.
yep.
That's-
Okay, next I'm gonna go through the written questions and comments. First one, where will the trail fit? It is all sidewalk / road or cemented creek, from El Camino to Monroe. I think maybe we can pull up that slide again.
And honestly, you would want to pull up the last 3 slides, because either we retain the existing bike lanes or we do a redesign. So, and in a redesign, you would be removing concrete and removing asphalt to create more floodway for the channel and putting in a trail in that area. In that instance too, for those of you who know the area well, eucalyptus and oleander that exist, all of that would come down and be replaced by native trees that you typically would find in Santa Clara Valley along creeks.
Okay, thanks, Jonna. And then Linda had a comment about the bike route is really bad on Calabasas. So we'll note that in as documentation for this meeting. The next comment from John, option 2 looks so much better. Straight shots will have more users over time. Switchbacks are less safe and far longer, slower, discouraging use. If we build all of this, it should be built best for 50 years. Thanks.
You're here.
Okay. John had another comment. 100% agree with stairs as a quicker bypass if we have long switchbacks. They're safer, especially with those 180-degree turns. Thanks again. And then lastly from Jen, most of Calabasas is already a single lane with bike lane, only goes to 2 lanes near Wilcox. Yeah, so that was just a comment. I don't know if you have anything to add, Jonna, about
No.
that. Great comments.
Thank you. I
And
don't see any other hands raised.
yeah, that was all.
Okay, great. So as Jonna mentioned, later this fall or winter, we'll have follow-up meetings on these trails. Hopefully we'll have some answers for some of the questions that were asked tonight, and then we'll have more refined design for the 3 trails. We'll have a draft master plan release for comment, and then hopefully in 2026, we can get the final Creek Trail Master Plan approved. As mentioned, if you want to sign up for notices, go to the project webpage and put in your name or email in the box, and we'll send out messages about the project in the future. Thank you all for spending part of your evening with us. Really appreciate your questions and comments, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in the fall.